I'm 17 and I am a psychopath. How do you feel about this? I'm not serious, I'm really not a psychopath. I cry even if a bacterium dies. But what did you infer about me when I said that? Some of you probably thought I must be some sort of Dexter-like serial killer who used to kidnap my friends' dogs and use them for experiments. But I'm not. Maybe psychopathy isn't as common, but how many times have we suspected of suffering from a mental disorder? How many times have we feared not only of talking to those eerie psychologists who claim to explain unexplainable things in our lives, but also realizing that maybe they're right. Maybe we belong to the outsiders, to the misfits, to the crazy ones, those ostracized who will never be a functioning part of society. Maybe we're ashamed to ourselves and our family. But having a mental illness doesn't necessarily have to be something to be ashamed of, or something that will always rule our life. It certainly affects how we sometimes behave, but it's not who we are. We are not our mental disorder. It is an unknown part of us, kind of like the Jungian shadow, which is an unconscious part of our mind that we have to accept to fully understand and love ourselves. Jung says that eventually we have to accept even this dark side of us. So we have to recognize the disorder and learn to live with it. Many times during my relatively young life, I've thought that the greatest skill to acquire was to be independent and overcome struggles by yourself without any help. And while this is really useful, it also requires a mentally healthy person and a mature one to acquire. So this isn't always the case. So not everyone knows how to handle life's hardships on his or her own, but rather needs to be helped in their journey to find and love themselves, especially mentally ill people who might need some extra help. Now, the last couple of years haven't been really easy for me, and I thought that I could heal by myself, but I was wrong. Luckily, I found out that the cure for what's sick inside is in the outside world. Walking through nature, starting a new hobby, but most importantly, finding friends who you feel comfortable with, true friends. And we should be those friends for mentally ill people. Because once we get to know them, they're really amazing people who see the world from a unique point of view and want to share it with us. I recently talked with my grandfather, who has always been kind of a mysterious figure for me. I didn't really know him because he lives in another region, and he also is schizophrenic and bipolar. So that maybe contributed to the shroud of mystery around him for me. I hadn't really met a person with these mental disorders before, so I was curious to meet him. I texted him, and in a couple of messages, I was thrown into a new world to explore. I realized how we view life in a particular and interesting way. We talked about the strangest theories on time and space, and I like coming up with the weird speculations about many topics. So it was a really fascinating conversation for me. We also examined mental disorders, and I asked him about his experience. He said that it does feel partly misunderstood, but he also claimed that it's impossible to fully understand anyone, if not with telepathy. And even if this happened, comprehension doesn't necessarily mean acceptance. The only people we can know are the ones we truly love. And even them, and even about them, we always find something new every day. But we eventually accept it because we love them for their complexity. My grandfather also mentioned that there are still a lot of ignorance and prejudices on mentally ill people. They're still considered dangerous, helpless, and useless. Even if 1 in 4 people confronts a mental disorder at least one time in their life. So it's a really common health problem, which shouldn't be ignored or stigmatized, but rather we should talk about it with the people and help them. Despite this, many people consider themselves normal, but who's really normal in today's society, which eventually infects us with a little bit of frustration, stress, worries? Franco Basaglia, which is one of the most important Italian psychiatrists of the 20th century, who fought for the acceptance of mental disorders in Italy and went against the violence and dehumanization of mental hospitals, said that madness is a human condition. It's as present in us as reason. So in order to call it civil, our society should accept insanity as much as it accepts sanity. I like to end my talk with another quote from Edgar Allan Poe, which is a person who delved deep into human madness. He said, "I became insane with long intervals of horrible sanity." This was because he realized that during these intervals of consciousness, he didn't really like his life. So we should help in any way mentally ill people, so that in the future, no one else will ever say or live something like this.